Welcome to another edition of the Civ Battle Royale. My name is Dawkinzz, and this is part 86, Everybody Hates Tibet, Requiem for a Leg Day, or The Killing Ground. I'm sure they haven't decided on a title, so we're gonna go with all three. So let's get right into it, shall we? Hello everybody, it's Surdej. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, but he's a power ranker and board technocrat here to bring you another exciting part of everybody's favorite AI game. Last part we saw the Boers declare war on Sparta, much to the dismay of Malik of Divin, shown above. Will the Boers assimilate Sparta, or shall Tuesday remain leg day? Next we have a beautiful map created by user Spherical Melon, who always does an incredible job every part, thank you, detailing the countries of the cylinder and the size of their cities. Many cities of the major powers have taken a hit in population since the reboot, which might give some underdogs a fighting chance. Come on, Blackfoot, do it! Lastly, we see the Boers still hold on to the top spot, though their standard deviation continues to grow, as many have doubts on the Orange Menace. Will Paul Kruger be able to prove them wrong? Let's find out this part. We begin this part with Australia making peace with Brazil, ending the Australian influence on South America. Pedro now controls nearly all of South America, with only a few Buccaneer holdout cities standing between him and complete control. But it seems that he has moved his land units back towards the mainland, with the intent of capturing Huamunga and its uranium deposit. Meanwhile, mad that he lost his top 10 slot in the power rankings, Genghis decides to declare war on Tibet to prove us all wrong about his conquering prowess. Meanwhile, Swedish Vertals attack the Finnish city of Oulu, with SAMs and power armor units awaiting further instructions. Kekkonen, meanwhile, has only a lone pair of mech artillery defending the city, while a naval blockade of Gdansk is being challenged by the Swedish Navy. Further south, Helsinki finds itself in similar trouble, with Swedish troops crossing the Baltic Sea to launch dual attacks on the Finnish capital of Royale. I think I'm pronouncing these incorrectly, but whatever. Yet once again, Finland has a few troops to meet the invaders, only having 5 military units in this slide. It's not looking good for Finland, guys. In a citadel near Minsk, a long-forgotten pikeman watches on as things get even worse for Finland the closer to the equator we get, as Panzan and Adrianople fall to the Swedish army. While Panzan looks safe for now, besides the constant bombardment it and Corinth are receiving, Kekkonen has the chance to retake Adrianople if he can get his melee ships into range, but we'll see if that's possible, or if he's been reading How to Win Wars Good by our late great Mao. We all knew it was coming. With a mighty robotic foot, the Boer gigantic death robot takes Jerusalem and Epidaurus, ending the regime and reign of Leonidas once and for all. Oh Sparta, you were the first to take a capital, the first to eliminate Civ, and while you never reached the top spot, you peaked at 5, you will always be number 1 in the hearts of many a shitposter. Now cracks a noble heart. Good night, sweet prince, and flights of angels who never skip leg day. Sing thee to thy rest. F. Back in the Middle East, Sabir sends a small force to Ganzi, intent on taking it back. The mountainous terrain and Finnish exclaves make this war a perpetual meat grinder, but it is hard to say when or even if a decisive blow will be dealt. To the west, Bukhara rebuilds its walls as Tiridates III plots his next move. Further to the east, the Sabir hold on the city of Nishapur, with the Vietnamese looking to capture the city yet again. While Vietnam has more units, a majority of these shown are UAVs, which cannot take cities, giving Kamcha Khan the slight advantage. Vietnam do some cool stuff. Meanwhile, an Inuit cruiser laden with nuclear missiles makes its way towards Australian America. Few but the Australian Air Force hold the city, and while no melee White Walkers are in enemy lines, the nearest is chilling near Monterey, good pun, a few well-placed nukes could bring an entirely different sort of winter. Inuit forces continue to surround the city of Ujmal, though nearby units of Econic's forces remain battered from their recent conquers. Meanwhile, the Buccaneers begin to rebuild as well, their Central American holdings recovering as their time in the war seems to draw to a close. Sweet whistling loot fish. Ew. One turn later, Gustavus manages to capture Helsinki, giving the Swedes another capital and forcing Kekkonen to retreat to an undisclosed location. The Lion of the North proves he's playing for keeps and continues to move his men further east, giving pursuit to the Finns. If you had said that this would be the case for Finland, say, 30 parts ago, I'd say you're crazy. There's no way that Sweden would beat Finland, but now, it's looking a little hairy for our Finnish friends. Meanwhile, in Kashlik, Kumsha Khan decides that plowing through Vietnam to get to Tibet is a fool's errand and makes peace with Songsan Gampo. While the city is still reeling from the nuclear blast it took a few parts ago, the Siberians continue to fight their good fight. Sejong comes to a similar notion as the Siberians and makes peace with Tibet as well. While this would be a good thing for Tibet, Ekanik and his gopher, neighbor, it's not, come on, man, Blackfoot. Blackfoot declare war on them at the same time. While this probably means nothing, with Crowfoot's legendary sniping skills, anything is possible. In the former Yakutian lands, Ekanik plots to move further west and attack Kumsha Khan. While such an attack would probably not amount to much, it could make diplomacy with the Trung sisters more amiable. Speaking of the Trungs, they seem to be plotting against Jandamara, hoping to take the former Indonesian islands for themselves. While borders are currently open between the two countries, an invasion could bring relevance to a usually quiet area of the cylinder. Back on the Finno-Swedish front, Ulo still holds while Gdansk looks to be in good shape. The Finnish Navy meanwhile continues to sail around, not risking attacking the few Swedish ships in the Arctic Circle. The heat of the action is seen here though, as Gustavus marches on Minsk, nearly bringing the city to its knees in a single turn. Kekkonen meanwhile has retreated to Moscow, where he is almost certainly in Stalin's old bunker, helping himself to his former rival's vodka stash, wondering where it all went wrong. The south of the battlefront remains the same, however, with the Finnish Navy in the Black Sea bungling a possible recapture of Adrianople. Gdansk falls back into Siberian hands, and Vietnam seems poised to take it back in a matter of turns. Armenia can only watch on as the two powers vie for control. There is little Tiridates III can do but rebuild, rearm, and wait for the eventual next fight. With a few turns under our belt, we send our spies to various new cities. Iceland and Brazil are the most interesting to see, while Armenia and Finland will be good to watch how civs on the chopping block are faring. Back at Oulu, Sweden looks poised to take the city the following turn, provided the power armor infantry doesn't die. From there, Gustavus could either move to take who names these cities? Javatsklana and Vatnava, and there's little Finland can do to stop them, except rename them something easier to pronounce. While Espoo takes some damage, Finland is so devoid of units that Gustavus is brazenly sending Vertals deep into enemy territory. All the Finns can do now is ready their air force, hold their artillery in their cities, and pray to whatever god they lost in the revival that Sweden offers peace terms soon. Unsurprisingly, little changes to the south of the battle for Finland and Sweden, but what is surprising is that Finland has open borders with both Finland and Iceland. If the Trunk sisters move against Gustavus, it could spell disaster, as the southern borders of Sweden are exposed entirely. Ooh, green could be entering Europe. Finland has a pair of hover tanks left over from the Armenian invasion, stuck in an exclave while the main countryside is being ransacked. Gdansk flips back to Vietnam, and Armenia, despite their best efforts of the Blue Cassette folks, build a carrier, proving that not even our benevolent gods can suppress the might of Armenia. To the east, Nishapur holds, with the Trung sisters moving forces east to retake the city. This massive game of reversey, flipping a few border cities back and forth between Sibir and Vietnam, has been a massive drain on both countries, but has affected Sibir much more than the sisters. Bamda flips back to Vietnam, though the way to the nearest Siberian city is blocked by the two greatest forces of this war, mountains and Finns. To the east, Mongolia's carpet is severely underdeveloped, but still a force that can give a sparsely defended country like Sibir a run for its money. Back in North America, Waiapu falls to the Inuit, leaving only 2 cities in Parks' hands this side of the Pacific. Meanwhile, Crowfoot seems to have given Ekanek open borders, allowing the Inuit to waltz through his lands towards Australia. Further south, Inuit forces move in on the last Australian city in Central America. Parks has ships and planes in spades, but the lack of melee units means that Australia will undoubtedly lose their American holdings if this continues. Speaking of ships, a contingent of the Australian garbage patch is shown here, with a large number of carriers surrounding Coffs Harbour. Whether the fleet of paratroopers are heading or fleeing to North America is uncertain, but it might be too little, too late. And perhaps the ballsiest move since MK 2.1 started, Sweden moves in on not one, not two, but 3 different cities at the same time. Oh god, please. La-ba-da-da-da-da-da! And Moscow go to the yellow while Kekkonen flips Minsk back to his control for the time being. While Swedish melee units aren't in range to recapture, it's unlikely Finland will hold Minsk for long the way Sweden is going. Drunk off his rocker, Kekkonen orders a hover tank to recapture Adrianople. When his advisors tell him that it is impossible, he throws an empty vodka bottle at them. Meanwhile, it seems that Sweden has open borders with Iceland, who in turn has given Vietnam free passage as well. As we move into the Levant, we see Vietnam has also gained open borders with Armenia, who has continued to rearm itself, making another carrier. Yeah, good job. Everybody seems to like Vietnam as opposed to their exclave Tibet, who just got war declared on it by Yakutia. Nishapur holds, and it seems that Sibir has a slight advantage in this situation. The old Timur capital of Samarkand is unpuppeted, allowing Sibir to churn unit after unit out, whereas most of the cities along this front are puppets, with Lahore the sole exception. Bomda flips back to Sibir, though with the amount of Vietnamese units in the area, a reverse flip could very well be seen very soon. Cities on the Vietnamese side are also puppets, with only Old Saray being the only non-annexed Sibir city shown. You know what isn't puppeted though? Vietnam's core, which still has troops to spare, albeit a bit too many UAVs for my taste. Also seen here is a shot of Tibet, who, after nearly 20 turns, have yet to use their great prophet. Come on, Songtsen, get it together. This is why you're getting all of those wars declared on you. That and you're the only freedom-based civ. Let freedom ring, baby. Back in Hawaii, the island's not the civ, unfortunately, the Australians are recovering from the attacks by the Inuit. It also seems like they have open borders with the Blackfoot, making the likelihood of Crowfoot joining this war slim to none. The Inuit Northern Front seems to have changed a little, but the open borders with Vietnam shows that the Trunk Sisters seem to be everybody's friend but Sibir. The Blackfoot also have puppeted most of the former Mexican cities, meaning his production of more units will be limited. Down in Central America, Parks is kicked from his last holdings as Ekinic takes Ujmal. Dejected, Australia takes a few more shots at the Buccaneers before sailing to brighter seas. Down in Brazil, we see a carnival of units, a strong carpet for Pedro that just needs someone to throw it at. But it seems Brazil is more interested in getting ready for the next UN meeting, where they will discuss a World's Fair and national heritage sites. That should be pretty interesting. Meanwhile, Iceland has been busy unpuppeting the cities of England and Ireland, creating a good production base for Europe to go along with all of those walls of carriers. The friendship with Sweden, as shown by open borders, means that an intervention by Iceland on Finland's behalf is unlikely. Speaking of Finland, Lappeenranta falls to the Swedish, and the advancing armies of Gustavus march towards Vanta, ignoring Jyväskylä, and then they go to Blue Blob, Blooby Bland, and Tudu Doodoo Face. These are the names of the cities from now on, for the time being. Also shown here are a mass of Finnish carriers floating idly in the Siberian waters as their country burns. Their power is all but useless, as Sweden has sent no ships to the region, forcing engagements only on land, which Finland can't handle. Sorry guys, you're on your way out. And force engagements they do! Minsk and Moscow are nearly theirs, and Vasa is being besieged as well. Kekkonen seems to be pulling his men back, trying to find some ground to hold against the advancing army, but will he find it in time? While the Battle of the South hasn't changed much, direct your attention to Constantinople. Boer units are in Icelandic borders, meaning that the two nations are probably on good terms. While this is good news for peace, it undoubtedly means that a Neo-Punic war between Iceland and the Boers is not in the cards for the time being. Stink. A Sri Lankan trading ship sails through Boer waters, passing through almost as many carriers as there are hover tanks, as they travel to the only shown puppet city that the Boers have in the south. With their massive production, the Boers can start cranking out more units soon enough, just as soon as they stop starving their cities. Back on the Viberian front, little has changed. Sibir continues to hold Nishapur and Bamda, and Vietnam desperately tries to retake them. Those two cities, along with Ganzi to the south, form a meat grinder which slowly drains the two civs of resources, though it is unclear who will win and take advantage of this in the end. Mongolia has a small problem, and that is that it's woefully behind in tech. They barely have 70 tech, and with Korea as its neighbor, a war could mean the end for Genghis. His cities have a laughable defense number, only one of the cities shown here has triple digits. While he has less forces, Sejong's superior armed forces would rage through Mongolian lands in short order. But Genghis isn't alone in this. Down in Kimdonesia, we see that most of Jamdamara's cities are unpuppeted and have low defenses when compared to Australia and Vietnam. The Kimberley better hope that Trung Nhi and Trung Trak don't decide to have Jamdamara become another Trung sister. Next, we go to a shot of the Australian Eastern Core in all of its glory. Most of the former Kimberley cities have now been unpuppeted, and Parks is armed to the teeth with units, though the couple of diggers seem out of place here. While he may be losing his holdings in America, it will be much harder to force Parks from his native space. Deep in the Pacific, a Blackfoot cargo ship trades food and supplies from the mainland to a far-flung colony of the Aleutian Islands. Will they survive the unknown terrors of the deep? Maybe. I don't know. These cities have been relatively peaceful throughout the CBR, and will most likely be one of the hardest hit when the eventual war with the Inuit commences. This turn ends with Ekenik's forces right outside of Torreon. Will the White Walkers be able to take Parks' last tenuous hold on America? You goddamn right. Torreon falls to the Inuit, and Australia throws in the towel. The war is over, and while Parks has gained some land from the White Walkers, it's not anywhere enough to make up for what was lost. In a rage, Parks decides to join the growing coalition of anti-Tibet, hoping to bring at least somebody down. The Inuit-Australian peace deal is also a boon for the Buccaneers, who are now protected by the borders of Brazil and the Inuit from further Aussie attacks. A lone Icelandic caravel looks on, wondering what the hell is going on down here. A shot of North Africa, where workers vastly outnumber the actual fighting units. While many cities are puppeted, the few that aren't seem to be churning out a great deal of units. But war doesn't seem to be on Engelfer's mind for the time, so Kruger is sending his legion of workers to clean up and set up before the carpet comes. Ugh. Back on the Nordic War, Vanta is on the verge of collapse, and previous Swedish gains seem to be well within their grasp. Meanwhile, Sibir cleared the way for Finland's fleets, but Kekkonen seems content to have his ships sit in the Arctic Circle for now. Further south, it seems Kekkonen has begun to put up a resistance. Minsk flipped back to his side, and Moscow has a few melee units nearby ready to take back the city. But Sweden has taken Vasa and doesn't show signs of stopping his campaign anytime soon. Nakia, a city that has been ignored by Sweden for most of this campaign, now begins taking damage via bombing runs. From the coastline, Icelandic, Vietnamese, Boer, and even a lone Armenian paratrooper watch as Sweden tears through Finland like wet tissue paper. Near the Levant, Paul Kruger seems to be moving a large number of forces towards Anatolia. Who knows what is going through... Hang on a minute, is that a caravel I spy in the Mediterranean? Come on, Engelfer, I know you have most capitals, but that's no excuse for not doing your upgrading. Ganzi continues to remain green for the time being, though Kumcha Khan can and will probably have something to say about this. He is even sending a few squads to try and recapture Kabul. Meanwhile, Armenia continues to tempt fate as it rearms itself, but the open borders between it and its two biggest threats seem to be pretty good for Tiridates III. Nishapur and Bamda continue to hold for Sibir, though, and the Trung sisters seem to be struggling to capture the other cities, let alone securing them. But with all of the resources wasted, one must wonder when peace will be declared, if ever. We've always been at war with Vietnam. On the Indian subcontinent, we see a shot of Vietnam, along with a brief glimpse at Sri Lanka. With a mix of annexed and puppeted cities, these cities offer various degrees of importance, but thanks to Sri Lanka and Kimberley's attitude, this seems to be fine for now. A shot of Sibir's core with few units and even fewer puppeted cities. Despite that, Kumcha Khan's cities have better defense than their Mongolian brethren to the north in their exclave. The Blackfoot Corps, meanwhile, has a large number of paratroopers and a healthy smattering of tanks and artillery as well. If Crowfoot survives that long, those paratroopers will turn into XCOMs, meaning that Blackfoot can have even better snipes. A shot of Iceland's border with the Inuit show 2 fleets, and while the White Walkers have a smaller fleet, Iceland has a whole bunch of carriers mucking things up. But to their credit, Ingolfur has more production muscle in Greenland than Ekkanig does on the former Canadian coast, so this could be anyone's game, especially if Iceland upgrades those paratroopers. Back on the Swedes, we see that Vanta has fallen and Tapir seems to be the next to go. Astute viewers may also see we have an extra spy at our disposal, and that can only mean one thing. Moscow has fallen to the Swedes! The Swedes celebrate both this victory and the capture of Nikia to the south. While the Finnish forces attempt to retake the city, Kekkonen retreats to Leningrad, his antlers broken, his glasses shattered, and smashed on Soviet vodka. How many capitals do the Swedish have now? While Minsk and Nikia have not fallen firmly into Swedish hands, it seems only a matter of time before they fall into Gustavus's hands, like so many other Finnish cities. As Finland's neighbors continue to watch, it seems unlikely that they will help Kekkonen escape his grisly fate. Moving westward, we see a shot of the Swedish core where the coast is more heavily defended than the mainland. This is to be expected considering that the armies march east into Finland, but Gustavus should think about unpuppeting some of those cities soon, as they can start churning out more units for war and defense if Iceland or the Boers decide to grab up some of that Swedish sweet stuff. Speaking of cores, check out that Boer core. Kruger's homeland seems to be decently covered in a mixture of infantries and hover tanks, and many of his major cities, including former Congolese capital Mbanza Congo, have been unpuppeted or continue to produce units eager to refill Kruger's armies. The north of Boerlands, however, are sparsely filled and filled with puppets. Although Iceland has a few cities like Carthage and Rome to pump out units, the open borders between the two civs, coupled with the fact that Ingolfur has no less than 3 caravels sitting in the sea, means that Paul Kruger probably has a bit more time to annex these cities. As we continue along the coast, we see a few Boer cities that have been annexed, but they're still in chains. Get working on those courthouses, Kruger, while Ingolfur has annexed the former fields of France. While this could spell trouble, Kruger's cities have high defenses thanks to the various future world's wonders, meaning it will take more than a few caravels to bring them under Iceland's control. Back in the mountains, where I remember you, Sibir and Vietnam still maintain their tenuous grip on the cities from a few slides back, but Vietnam has taken to shelling a few of the inner cities. One must wonder how long this war will continue to rage, as no decisive breakthrough has been made. With the slow grindingness of the war, one must wonder why Vietnam or Sibir hasn't invaded the exclaves of Finland yet. These would open up new points in the conflict and potentially cause a breakthrough. While this might backfire on Sibir being close to the Finnish border, one must wonder why Vietnam continues to be peaceful with Kekkonen when there is just so much to gain. One must wonder. I wonder. What would we wonder about? Moving to Vietnam's core, we see the Vietnamese carpet is primarily UAV drones, the eyes in the sky, giving you the weather report on Channel 4 News. Sorry. Though the sisters seem to have a good number of paratroopers as well, which can be converted into XCOM units later on. We also see that the new religion Buddhism doesn't seem to be spreading quickly, but it is still doing better than Tibet's religion, which doesn't exist at all. The Kimberley send a trading ship to their former enemies Australia, where we get to see Sydney in all of its glory. The Australians may have lost America, but they aren't budging from Oceania anytime soon. The island chain to the northeast of New Zealand confirms this, as numerous cities have over 200 defense and are protected by the Grand Wobbegong Armada. Only time will tell, though, if Australia decides to use its massive power for anything besides defense. As the Inuit rebuild their new conquests, a Texan trading vessel is seen here, moving through Buccaneer lands to reach the far-off city of Aninin, on the other side of the country, held by the Blackfoot. Henry Morgan seems content to let Sam Houston survive for now, but one must wonder when Morgan will stop drinking his rum and start pillaging again. Taking a look at the cities for a change, we see Tiridates II, the third, I don't know if it's his son or his father, rebuilding his glorious army, this time adding paratroopers to supplement his tanks and carriers. Yerevan also seems to be missing the plague that attacked so many capitals. Down in Rio, Pedro II is working to harness the power of the tides to help him increase production in his capital. He also seems to have been spared the plague. Kanaohe also seems to be bereft of the plague as Kamehameha orders for more cargo ships to be built. His city is also close to making a great artist. Who knows what art it will make on an idyllic island such as this. Reykjavik, meanwhile, is busy creating railgun armor, most likely to shore up his defenses. With the Boers as his neighbors, Ingolfur is right to be building his army up, but perhaps it would be better to make these in the mainland Ingolfur. Tampere falls to the yellow fever, and it seems that Kuopio is next to go. The once mighty Finnish Empire is now just a line between the might of Sweden and Sibir. While Finland may not go away for good due to their exclaves, the end is drawing near for Urho Kekkonen. Minsk and Nikia have fallen into Sweden's hands, and with no melee units in sight, it seems that this time they're Gustavus's for good. The Finnish forces should retreat to make their last stand soon, before Finland is nothing more than exclaves. Look at all these Vietnamese troops. I didn't realize what Vietnam was doing at first with all of these units here, but then it hit me. Vietnam is going through Finland to reach Sibir. It's a ballsy move, folks, but will it pay off? As we look at the Arabian Peninsula, we see the majority of Vietnamese cities are undefended, with the exception of Vung Tau, while the Boers have many workers but few troops in the area. Do the Trung sisters feel that safe, or do they just not want to send anyone into the desert? One thing's for certain, anything is better than the mountain meat grinder. Sibir forces are positioned in Tiamen, not allowing Vietnam to cross through the exclave into their homeland. Besides a little more bombing for the border towns, it's business as usual here. That's not to say the Trung sisters aren't trying. Units seem to be marching from Jigais and Hoalu towards the fight, which could see more intense fighting in the coming parts. Also of note is Tibet's units spreading out into Vietnam, eagerly spreading out to make their own outdated carpet to rival Mongolia. Up in the frozen coast of Asia, a couple of Finnish draft-dodging paratroopers watch as White Walker workers work hard at improving the lands formerly held by Yakusha. While there aren't many units and a whole lot of puppeted cities, Ekanik might soon have this area covered in a blizzard of units. Down in Indonesia, we see a large group of Australian units defending the islands in case of an invasion by Vietnam. While such a thing is unlikely, Park's turtling strategy might create troubles down the line for the Trung sisters. There she blows, the poorly defended Buccaneer Corps. Morgan only has a handful of troops scattered across the Caribbean, and much of his air force is stationed in Petit Grove. He's going to have to put some real muscle into unit production, or else the Inuit may decide they want some rum. And with that, we come to the stat slides. Here we have a look at the gold count, where Paul Kruger has a considerable 4 billion gold lead over the runner-up of Australia. Now, if only Kruger could start using that money. At the bottom of the ladder, though, we see that Finland is now hemorrhaging money, having lost most of their empire to Sweden. It's getting to the point that Finland might not be able to pay his troops. Turning to land area, Australia continues to hold the record, whereas the Boers and the Inuit are in a close race for second place. However, considering that Info Addict counts the water tiles, looking at user Pythor101's recent post of Civ's true size, the Boers have the largest land area with the almost entirety of Africa. Sweden has also added a large amount of land to their empire, allowing them to pass Korea in size, also known as top 10, the Blackfoot. Finland, meanwhile, falls behind Kimberley and the Buccaneers. Ouch. While Mongolia not far behind them. Just imagine, if Genghis had taken Turfan, Finland's fall would have been even more embarrassing. Next we have military manpower, where we see the gap between Australia's first place shrinking as the Boers and Inuit catch up. Sweden's military is still holding strong, only 100,000 men behind Kumchak Khan. Urho's military, meanwhile, is in tatters, having fallen behind Sri Lanka. Oh my god, it is a bad time to be a Finland supporter. Worse still, a great deal of that manpower is either far from the battleground of Eurasia or a fleet with no one to fight. Finally, we end with a global relations image showing just how much Tibet is reviled, those filthy freedom-loving freaks. Don't worry, Tibet, we still love you. With that, this part comes to an end. Thanks to all who make the CBR possible. And to the original content makers, who without we'd have a much more strenuous time between posts. Thank you to everybody, all the Poland balls, the shit posters, especially the power rankers. You guys have no idea how much work actually goes into that. I really admire them. You guys do a fantastic job. But with that, this has been Mr. J signing off. I hope I pronounced that correctly, man. Please correct me, or female, I'm not sure, or whoever. Gender fluidity, gender is a construct. Let's tear it apart. So anyway, my name is Dawkinzz. Thank you very much for joining us this week, and we'll see you next time.